Sit with the workers where you belong, my brother sneered at Dad's birthday. Then his boss walked in and called me Madam Chair. The champagne stopped flowing. My name's Sabine Ortiz. I'm 34 years old. The first thing I saw at my father's 60th birthday party wasn't him, but the dismissive wave from Dylan, my brother. He gestured with his champagne flute toward the back of the grand ballroom, near the swinging doors to the kitchen. Sabine, we saved you a spot. It wasn't a greeting, it was a placement, a designation. The workers' table, tucked away with an off-duty sound guy checking his phone and a distant cousin who wasn't important enough to be in the family business. My dress, a simple navy sheath I'd chosen for its quiet confidence, suddenly felt like a uniform. I could feel the eyes of the city's elite sliding right past me, as if I were part of the catering staff. Across the room, I saw my dad. He was laughing, a big, booming sound that filled the space, his arm draped over the shoulder of Gavin Mercer, a developer whose smile was as polished and fake as the marble floors of the Riverside Opera House. Dad caught my eye for a fraction of a second, gave a quick, almost imperceptible nod, and then turned right back to his conversation. It was the acknowledgement a king gives a subject, not what a father gives a daughter. My stepmother, Monica, glided over, a vision in shimmering gold, her apology as thin and brittle as her champagne flute. "So sorry about the seating, darling," she murmured, her eyes flicking over my shoulder to the important people she'd left behind. "There are just so many important people here tonight." She didn't need to say the rest. "And you aren't one of them." The cloying scent of her perfume, some expensive floral I could never place, instantly took me back 12 years. I was standing in Dad's home office, the smell of leather and his cologne thick in the air, as he told me my college fund was gone. $48,300, he'd said, not even looking at me. Dylan needed it. His business idea is a sure thing. It wasn't. It was a spectacular failure, just like the 3 that came after it. He'd told me then to stop dreaming and start being useful to the family. That was the day I packed a single bag and my cheap camera and walked out. Now, as I took my assigned seat at the table they chose for me, my phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from Grace Turner, my ally and friend. "Notes are locked. You control the votes." A second buzz, almost immediately after, an email from Tara Green, the auditor I'd hired. The subject line was all I needed to see. Invoice analysis complete. The trap was set. They just didn't know they were walking into it. The mayor, Elaine Porter, couldn't make it, but she sent her economic director, Caleb Morton. He was a tall, serious man who didn't waste time on small talk. He walked into the ballroom, and his eyes scanned the crowd of power brokers and social climbers, bypassing my father, bypassing Gavin Mercer, bypassing everyone who thought they were the center of the universe. He walked a straight line through the glittering crowd, right to my table in the back. The sound guy looked up from his phone, confused. Caleb extended a hand to me, his voice perfectly pitched to be clear and audible over the string quartet. "Madam Chair, glad I caught you." The chatter around us didn't just quiet down. It died. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Conversations stopped cold. Behind him was Tara Green, the auditor, a woman with eyes that missed nothing. She simply nodded at me and said, "Chair Ortiz." I saw Dylan's face go slack, the confident smirk he always wore melting away as the color drained from his cheeks. Monica's perfectly painted smile froze, then seemed to crack like cheap porcelain. My father's laughter boomed out, a half-second too late and far too loud to be genuine. "Madam Chair, Sabine, what is this joke?" He strode over, his party host smile stretched tight across his face, and grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "What have you done?" he hissed, pulling me toward a shadowed alcove behind a potted palm. This was it. The first clash. I didn't pull away. I just stood there and looked at him, letting him see that the girl he'd dismissed was gone. I'm the new chair of the Waterfront Redevelopment Authority, Dad. His eyes widened, a flash of pure fury in them. Don't you dare embarrass us, he warned, his voice a low, dangerous growl. This is my night. I looked him dead in the eye, and for the first time, I didn't feel a shred of the old fear. No, I said, my own voice quiet but firm. It's Rivergate's night. Any faint hope I'd harbored for a quiet, peaceful resolution vanished in that moment. They thought I was just taking pictures. A sad little hobby for the daughter who didn't fit in. For years, they'd see me out in the forgotten neighborhoods, my cheap camera around my neck, and they'd shake their heads with pity. But my first step was never about power. It was about proof. My camera wasn't for art. It was for evidence. I captured every leaky roof on a senior's home, every cracked sidewalk that was a hazard to kids, and every neglected storefront in the parts of town that my father's friends, men like Gavin Mercer, ignored while they drew up plans for luxury high-rises. Grace Turner and I started with a small community fund. We didn't ask for permission from City Hall. We just started fixing things. We put a new roof on a widow's house before the winter rains came. We helped Luis Navarro, a local builder with more integrity than capital, buy a new truck after his was repossessed. We built trust, one person, one repaired porch, one patched pothole at a time. That trust turned into investments, small at first, a few $100s here, 1,000 there. Then it grew. We showed people how developers were buying up the city's debt for pennies on the dollar, using it as leverage to get sweetheart deals. So we started doing it too. We pooled our money and started buying the distressed notes, the IOUs, that were tied to the big waterfront project. We ended up paying $62 million for pieces of paper they all thought were worthless. But each of those notes came with a voice, with a tiny piece of influence. Those voices elected board members to the Waterfront Authority, one by one. This winter, our 9-member block quietly became the majority. And their very first vote was unanimous. They made me the chair. The real ticking clock wasn't the end of this party. It was the public meeting I'd already scheduled for next Tuesday, 5 days from now. But I didn't have to wait. I was going to use my father's stage to announce the new terms. I walked away from my father's stunned, angry face and pulled out my phone, opening the email from Tara. The preliminary audit report was attached. I scrolled past Gavin Mercer's company name. I knew his corruption was a given. That was the whole point of this. I was ready for that. Then I saw it. A name I knew better than my own. Ortiz Construction. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. The truth hit me like a physical blow, harder than any insult Dylan had ever thrown at me. My father wasn't just a social player in this rotten game. He was on the field, wearing the same dirty uniform as the rest of them. The audit laid it all out, in cold, hard numbers, padded invoices for city contracts, fake change orders to inflate costs, and charges for high-grade materials that were never delivered to the public pier maintenance project. He wasn't just a bad father who had betrayed my trust. He was part of the very rot I had sworn to cut out of this city. This changed everything. My plan had been to fix a broken system, to make it fair for honest people like Luis Navarro. Now I had to directly confront the man who had broken me in the first place. There was no way to spare him without becoming a hypocrite, without becoming just another part of the system I was fighting. Caleb Morton saw the look on my face. He leaned in, his expression concerned. "Is everything all right, Madam Chair?" I couldn't speak for a moment, so I just nodded. tucking my phone back into my clutch. I straightened my shoulders and walked toward the stage, where the microphone stood waiting for my father's self-congratulatory birthday toast. My brother Dylan, seeing where I was going, moved to block my path. His face was a mask of confusion and anger. "Get away from there, Sabine," he hissed. "You're making a scene." I didn't even look at him. I just walked around him as if he were another piece of furniture. This was it. This was my irreversible choice. The final, clean break with the person I used to be, the girl who would have stayed at her table and quietly seethed. I reached the stage and tapped the microphone. The feedback screeched through the ballroom, a piercing sound that silenced the room once and for all. Every head turned toward me. My father's, Monica's, Gavin Mercer's. I took a deep breath. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and steady, amplified to fill every corner of the opulent room. My father was just asking me about my new job. My goal was no longer just reform. It was a public reckoning. And I was going to make every single one of them answer for what they'd done, starting right now, on his stage, at his party. The moment I announced the open public meeting and the rebidding of all current waterfront contracts, the party fractured. The polite facade shattered into a million pieces. Dylan cornered me near the grand exit, his face blotchy and red with a fury I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. "You're trying to ruin him," he spat, his voice shaking. "After everything he's done for this family." I didn't rise to it. I felt strangely calm, as if I were observing all of this from a great distance. "He did nothing for me," I replied, my voice even. "He stole from me to fund your failures." That's when he shoved my shoulder, hard. It was a clumsy, childish move, but the venom behind it was real. "You're a vengeful bitch." The words hung in the air between us, a final nail in the coffin of whatever brother-sister relationship we might have once pretended to have. Across the room, I could see Monica in full damage control mode, fluttering from one cluster of her friends to another. Her hand was pressed to her pearls as she whispered furiously. I didn't need to hear her to know what she was saying. I could read her lips. She's always been unstable. Gavin Mercer didn't say a word. He just caught my eye from across the room, his expression unreadable, and gave a slow, deliberate shake of his head. It wasn't a denial of his guilt, it was a threat. In that moment, I lost any remaining safe space in that world. The narrative was being written in real time by the people I had just exposed. I was the ungrateful daughter, the unhinged woman, the destroyer of my own family. Then, a man with a weathered face and worried eyes approached me cautiously. It was Frank Dalton, the dock workers' union chief. "What does this mean for my guys' jobs, Ortiz?" he asked, his voice gravelly. The consequences were rippling outward, touching the lives of real people. The full weight of my decision settled onto my shoulders. I left the party through the same workers, entrance Dylan had sent me to earlier. The cool night air was a relief after the stuffy, hostile atmosphere inside. My phone rang. The screen showed Grace Turner's name. I answered. "You did it," she said, her voice a mixture of awe and deep concern. "I had to," I told her, leaning against the cold brick of the opera house. The adrenaline from the confrontation was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. "There's more," she said, and my stomach tightened. "A lot more." One of our sources inside Mercer's company got spooked by the whispers of an official audit. They were terrified of being implicated. They sent me a file. My hand trembled slightly as I held the phone to my ear. She told me to check my secure email. "It's bad, Sabine. I mean, really bad. Worse than padded invoices." I looked up and down the empty alley, the muffled sounds of the dying party a world away. I was completely alone, but for the first time in my life, I felt like 1,000 eyes were on me, watching from the shadows. I opened the file Grace sent me. It wasn't a complex legal document. It was a simple ledger of payments, a spreadsheet of greed. The money was flowing from one of Gavin Mercer's shell corporations, a company that existed only on paper. The payments were disguised as, quote, consulting fees, a classic move, and funneled to offshore accounts that were nearly impossible to trace. I saw the names of a few city officials I didn't recognize, people Mercer had obviously bought and paid for over the years. Then I saw the last entry on the list, a single payment of $50,000. The recipient wasn't a public official. The name was Dylan Ortiz. The second, more devastating reveal clicked into place. Dylan wasn't just the coddled screw-up, the beneficiary of my stolen college fund. He was a pawn, a willing participant in Mercer's criminal enterprise. The consulting fee was a kickback. It had to be. It was payment for insider information on contract bids. Information he could have only gotten from our father. My last safe option, the small bit of mercy I'd been planning to offer him, evaporated. The idea of giving him a soft landing with a community liaison job was a joke now. This wasn't just family favoritism anymore. This was a felony. The ticking clock of the Tuesday meeting suddenly felt like a bomb about to detonate. I was no longer just cleaning house. I was walking into a war with a corrupt developer who had already bought my brother. My phone rang again. This time, it was my dad. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was broken, pleading. "Sabine, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Don't do this. Mercer is a dangerous man. You'll destroy your brother." He didn't mentee on his own company. He didn't mention his own reputation or the fraudulent invoices. He only talked about Dylan. It was always about Dylan. "He made a mistake," Dad pleaded, his voice getting desperate. "He's not like you, Sabine. He's not strong. This will ruin him." He was hitting the deepest, oldest wound I had, the lifelong knowledge that in his eyes, I was the one who could handle pain, so I was the one who always had to. I was the one who had to be strong, so he never had to be a strong father for me. I ended the call without saying another word. A minute later, Caleb Morton called. His tone was grim. "Word is out," he said. "Mercer is calling in every favor he has at City Hall. Mayor Porter is holding firm. She's with you 100%, but this is going to get ugly. Some council members are getting wobbly. Watch your back." I felt the walls of the city closing in. The very system I was trying to fix was now turning its immense weight on me, trying to crush me before I could expose it. The goal of a clean, transparent Rivergate suddenly felt like a naive dream. All I had left was Tara Green's audit, Grace Turner's evidence of a criminal conspiracy, and a fragile, unproven belief that the truth would be enough. The meeting room at City Hall was a tinderbox. Every seat was filled. The local press, smelling blood in the water, lined the back wall with their cameras and microphones. My family sat in the front row. My father, who looked like he'd aged 10 years since his party. Monica, her face a rigid mask of contempt. Dylan wasn't there. Gavin Mercer and his team of expensive lawyers sat at a table to my left, whispering to each other behind cupped hands. Luis Navarro and the other local builders, men and women who had been shut out for years, sat to my right, their faces tense with a mixture of hope and anxiety. I brought the meeting to order with a single, sharp rap of the gavel. The sound cut through the nervous murmuring. I started, not with numbers or spreadsheets, but with a picture. On the large screen behind me, I projected one of the first photos I ever took with that cheap camera. A crumbling public pier, its wooden planks rotted through, with two small children playing dangerously close to a collapsed section. This is the pier Ortiz Construction was paid $1.2 million to repair 3 years ago, I said, my voice calm and amplified by the microphone. I let the image sink in. Then I clicked to the next slide. It was a scanned copy of my father's padded invoice, with Tara Green's annotations in red, highlighting the charges for materials that were never purchased. The room was dead silent. I moved on to Mercer. I displayed his company's fraudulent change orders next to a glossy photo of the luxury condo lobby he'd built with the siphoned-off public funds. The contrast between the public decay and his private opulence was stark. I paid off the second motif. For years, the wealth of this city, your wealth, has been treated like a private fund for a select few, I said, looking directly at Mercer, whose face was turning a blotchy red. That ends today. I laid out the new, open bidding process. Every contract would be posted publicly, and every invoice would be audited in real time. No more backroom deals. No more secrets. Finally, I turned my attention to the front row, to my family. Ortiz Construction can rebid for a probationary maintenance contract supervised by a third-party inspector, I announced, or they can be barred from all city work for the next 5 years. I paused, letting the choice hang in the air. As for the matter of a $50,000 consulting fee paid to a private citizen with familial ties to a bidder, I am turning that evidence over to the district attorney's office this afternoon. My father slumped in his chair as if his bones had turned to dust. Mercer's lawyer began whispering furiously in his client's ear. I hadn't offered them revenge. I had offered them consequences. The choice was theirs to make. The power was finally mine. 3 months later, the air down by the river smells like sawdust and fresh paint, not neglect and decay. I'm standing at the groundbreaking for the new Grace Turner Public Plaza, named for my partner, my friend, the woman who believed in this fight from the very beginning. Behind me, Luis Navarro's construction company is a beehive of activity. His crew is framing the new community boathouse. He got the contract, the first of many. He won it fair and square. My father is here. He's not in the front row with the dignitaries. He's over by a stack of lumber, supervising a crew of apprentices from the local trade school. It's part of the probationary contract he accepted. He looks smaller, humbled, but when he catches my eye, he nods. It's a small gesture, but it holds a flicker of something I haven't seen in years. Respect. Dylan is gone. He resigned from his make-work job and moved out of state the day after the district attorney's office called him in for questioning. Monica filed for divorce last month, citing irreconcilable differences. Her social standing in Rivergate evaporated overnight. For today's event, I've had a large round table set up right at the front with the best view of the river. It's reserved for the union crew leads, the site foreman, and the apprentices my father is mentoring. It's the workers' table. It echoes that night at the Opera House, but now, the power dynamic is set by me. I didn't just win a fight. I changed the rules. And from now on, in this city, everyone has a seat at the table. Everyone has a story about being underestimated. What's yours? Share it in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one.